Together with um, Can You Read My Thoughts, asking us, why did you want to become a psychologist? Why do you want to become a psychotherapist? Is one of the top questions, most common questions that we get in the field. And, somehow we try to explain our vocation. Like, why did we choose this path? Why did we, how did we come about this idea? And, we would say things like, when I was in high school or all along in my life, uh, friends, people will confide in me, will talk to me, and I will feel something inside. I want to do this. I mean, that is if you wanted to be a therapist, if you wanted to become, for example, a psychologist and become a therapist. Psychologists, we do many, many interesting things, fantastic things. We do research in fields like developmental psychology, and that's a trip. What my colleagues do in the field of developmental psychology is really incredible. And therapies like emotion-focused therapy, for example, are squarely based on the findings that many, many talented psychologists did on infants. If you ever take a book on infancy, take a course on infancy, if you're studying psychology, I really, really want you to take infancy, because IT8 for infancy, it was really mind-changing. When you see how the brain developed and how the emotional systems develop, is fascinating. The techniques, the method that they used to find out how a baby who cannot speak, deals with emotions and tries to communicate with the caregiver, for example. And that's the basis of something that, if you've ever been in couples therapy, these days, I think we would be very hard pressed to find one of us who doesn't practice emotion-focused therapy. Not necessarily as the sole thing, but I believe that most of us have a very strong background on emotion-focused therapy. And if you're a psychologist, then you begin to make these connections with the courses you took. And that's a fascinating area, for example. So you don't have to be a clinician. You can be a researcher. You can teach. You can get involved with the propositional aspects of psychology, the theory of psychology, the research behind psychology. And then you see psychotherapy as an application. So, but at the beginning, I think it's more common to find a therapist who said, this is what I wanted to be, as opposed to, I really wanted to study memory. I was in high school and I thought, memory, oh, that's a great, fantastic subject to study in psychology. That's what I want to be, a psychologist. These are harder questions, and you would have, a different research interest to pursue that. But if you want to be a therapist, from the get-go, you're thinking, I want to help people. You have this vocation. You're driven towards doing this. And that vocation then runs into constraints. Getting into a psychology program is incredibly difficult. At least it was in my time. It was insane. You had like 500 applicants and you have 12 spots. And of these 12 spots, half were already in the bag, because these were students who had been working in the lab with the professor, and that professor wanted that student because he was an A student and hardworking and someone you could trust. And the other, 4 or 6 came from folks who were like really, really smart, and they had A pluses, and they were guaranteed a spot. They had been doing a lot of work as well in other universities, working with driven, like really, really driven people. And the students I met at York University, holy cow, these people were really driven to do research and to study and very competitive. And um, so to get in that program, if you want to be a psychotherapist, it's like either you become a psychologist and you have to be this propositionally smart. You have to really, really good with exams and tests and have always sort of excelled through, you know, grade school, high school, undergrad school. You're a really driven person. So imagine that were the only thing that can make for a good therapist. Imagine that. So it will be very impossible to find help because also the university programs are churning out very few people. When I graduated from my PhD, I thought I was going to do the same I did with my master's. You know, send me the um, diploma, send it in the mail. I'm not going to go to the graduation ceremony. Somehow, mm, I changed my mind and I decided to go to the graduation. And oh boy, am I glad I went. So, first of all, I had never graduated at any university level to that extent. So you get robed and you get a funny hat and you walk, you're paraded in when everyone is sitting in. And there were hundreds of students graduating from the master's program and a few hundred, maybe a couple hundred, maybe 300, I don't know. But then there were hundreds and hundreds of family members, witnessing the event. I'm like, what is this? And they walked us up to stage, and we're facing everybody. Our names are flashed out in big screens. I see my name, flashing, and then I sit down. And we were about 7 students. That's it. Seven students were graduating from the PhD program in 2012. And I look around and I see this guy. Hey, I remember you. It's a colleague of mine. Brilliant guy, by the way. And he is sitting by my side, and we had started together the prom like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I don't even remember. And we're graduating together. And that's very odd. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You run into this person, so I'm sitting there. So imagine that you're graduating like a dozen people, a year from a program, maybe 20. I don't think more than that. That'll be a very generous number. So imagine that competition, and you want to be a therapist, and you can be an amazing therapist, but these constraints are getting in your way. What do you do? What do you do? Well, at the time, you could call yourself a psychotherapist. It was not a protected title. It's like now you can call yourself a um, um, what's the name? Psychometrists. I had to pause the video. I couldn't remember the title. So now you can call yourself a psychometrist. There's no issues with that. So at the time, you could call yourself a psychotherapist. The problem was that whatever money you had allocated for coverage to see a mental health professional only covered psychologists. So if you were a psychotherapist, you really had to be good. You really had to network. You really had to put a lot of effort into building a successful private practice. Uh, you couldn't even, as a psychotherapist, you could not even get hired by many clinics, organizations, community places. No, they will tell you, oh, you have a bachelor's in psychology. No, we can. Well, you need a master's. You need a master's in social work. That was the first profession that made it through and was able to see patients. All the dance psychologists were social workers. Okay, you have masters in social worker, you have masters in counseling. Uh, Other than that, no, you had a master's in history. Imagine any other profession, how many people facing these issues of constraints. Then they say, well, I don't know, I need money, I need to work. You start working, you work part-time, it's like a gig economy for you when you're doing when you become you used to be a psychotherapist back in the time. So you know my dream at the time, because I was a psychotherapist, so I didn't go through the clinical stream, which was even, I mean, if getting into psychology is difficult, getting into the clinical stream, at least at my time, was total insanity. So I went through a different process that was highly persecuted at the time, by the way. uh, Not only they didn't want psychotherapists, but also they did not want anybody who was outside the clinical stream. You had to get into the masters from the get-go to become a clinical psychologist. The possibility that you decided all of a sudden you felt the vocation, you say, huh, I actually don't want to be a developmental psychology. I want to be a clinical psychologist, but I'm already in, like not at all. You had to get from the beginning or not a chance. So I got in, but I started working as a psychotherapist. I didn't have the constraint. This was kind of a nebulous area. They knew, but they didn't want to know. It was kind of, maybe, you shouldn't be doing this because, I mean, you're not in the clinical stream. So I had a godsend at the time. Through a colleague who was a social worker, she had gotten a job at a place called Warren Shepell. That today is Morno Shepell, I believe. I believe that still that's the name because it's changed names so many times. So I went to an interview and I got hired part-time to do 2 days a week. And eventually, over the years, I made it to 5 days a week. And eventually, I made it to becoming a clinical supervisor at Warren Shepell. So you could say that I had a full career at Warren Shepell. Warren Shepell, never met the guy, but I met people who worked very close to him. And this man was a business and clinical uh, um, entrepreneur. And he was the first person who created an EAP. And this is a model that was coming from the United States. And he, I guess, learned about the model and he implemented in Canada. He made a lot of money. I believe he sold the company at the time he sold it, he made quite a good coin for the time. So he did quite well financially speaking. And he paid us shit. So I was making, as a full-time employee, about $33 an hour, $35 an hour. There were colleagues of mine who had been with the company longer. I believe maybe they made it to 50. That was like a check it. But here's the thing. It was the greatest clinical school ever. It was incredible. What I got there, it was not propositional knowing. It was procedural. It was practical. It was wisdom. Check this out. So you were in absolute control of your schedule. They will call you. You were given 4 new patients a week. and you could see them in whichever way you wanted. If you wanted to see the 4 new clients on a given day, you could. If you wanted to spread them, you could. So I would say I would see 2 new clients on Tuesdays and 2 new clients on Thursdays. And then these things get accumulated, but it's a short model. You were supposed to see people 3.1, an average of 3.1 sessions. That's what you would get. That's what your employer would pay to help you as their employee. However, the business worked for it to make sense to Warren Shepell. It had to be 3.1, but it wasn't like that at the beginning. I think at the beginning it was 8. You could get 8 sessions. And when the company was sold, it went down to 3.1. We were told we had to keep that average. You make it work. And of course, I mean, it makes absolutely, but absolutely no clinical sense whatsoever that you can be expected to all situations be given, a specific number of sessions. Other than you take them, some situations are simple, of course, but there are many, many situations that are complex. Depression, you're supposed to alleviate this person. So you end up, connecting with them. You ended up, sending to other places and so on, which is another problem. But this is the wonderful thing about Warren Shepell. I met at Warren Shepell very seasoned clinicians, social workers, and folks with masters in counseling. I believe those were the degrees. And these mostly women. I worked with women. I think I worked with a couple of men, but these were all wise women. And I've been trying to remember their names. This goes back to like 20 years ago. And I only come up with a couple of names. I come up with, my very good friend Gertrude Holcomb and Rosie Beitel. And there were others that I have their, image in my mind, and I feel so bad I can't remember them. Because what we would do is that we had breaks. We could schedule an hour break for lunch. Sometimes a patient didn't show up, and you ended up overlapping for lunch. You ended up just overlapping because you just happen to have a free hour. And often we would connect and talk shop. We would go to one another and say, "You're not going to believe the situation I just saw. You're not going to believe this guy. This guy's telling me this and this and that." And, what do you do here? Well, we will exchange clinical wisdom. Right? This wasn't it was peer supervision. And we would do peer supervision too, but it wasn't quite the same as these moments. I remember many times walking into Rose's office, or Rose walking into my office and say, "You gotta believe this. Check this out. I just saw this person, and we will supervise, peer supervision. And we would learn from each other. Oh, you do that. Oh, yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And what about this? And what about that? Lunch conversations often included conversations about, our situations in the clinical work, the concerns we had. So it was an incredible school, and I'm forever grateful to Mr. Warren Shepell for the opportunity. It was a great opportunity. And Warren Shepell also gave me the opportunity of becoming a supervisor, and it just happened like that. There was a position as a supervisor. I had, years of experience, and I applied and I got it. All of a sudden, I am the national supervisor for depression care. I had a program called Depression Care. All of a sudden, people are coming to me with their anxieties. I have this person here, and I feel this way, and what do you think like that? It was always very colloquial. It was always such a safe space of supervision, because I would treat them as colleagues. I would be like, well, this is what I think. I had the training. Rosie and Gertrude had trained me in how to be a supervisor in the way they did it. So it was a space for clinical thought. It was a place for strategy. It was a place for vulnerability. It was incredible uh, for a young therapist who's you know very eager as I was and very desirous of really becoming a therapist. I had this really uh, powerful intention of becoming a therapist. And I had to, when you're a student, I mean, this is a stuff of jokes. When you're a PhD student, you're so freaking broke and you're so stressed out. So, you're in fighting the fight the academic fight and the constraints of the academy, and then you have this desire to become well. Anyway, thank you. I'm super grateful for that opportunity. And now I want to talk to you about the CRPO. I remember, listen, I had a contact when the CRPO was being thought. Someone got me in touch, a colleague got me in touch with the lady. It was a lady. This lady was the planner. She was the project manager of sorts. And I said, "Listen, I'm a psychotherapist. I want to see if there's going to be a college, because that way, you have a representation, you have a respect. You can maybe get money from the insurance. Who knows?" And the lady told me, "Listen, this is very, very, very early days. This is going to take, I don't know, another 3-5 years." And I was so discouraged. And then my PhD is progressing, and eventually I registered as a psychologist, and then CRPO happened. And I was with what's the name of that? I was with an organization. I believe it still exists. But you pay your insurance to that organization. It had a very long name, the OMMPP, but whatever. And I had been paying my dues for many years, and I was totally in the right path to register as a psychotherapist. Then the bigger battle, the battle, becoming a PhD psychologist, happened, and it was also an incredible journey. It was a fantastic journey. I learned how to think. I learned how to read research. I learned how to be rigorous, how to think clearly. The academy, that's what it gives you, is the knowledge for sure. There's this, it teaches you how to think at a conceptual level, and how to write. You had to write a dissertation. That's a freaking trip to write a dissertation, let me tell you. And the jokes about what we go through when we're writing a dissertation, are very well known at least in the community. So this big battle, I'm winning it, I'm becoming a psychologist, and then I think I made a mistake, to be honest with you. I should have become both a psychotherapist, because I was a bona fide psychotherapist, and I was also a bona fide psychologist. And then I only chose becoming a psychologist. So then the CRPO happens. What a wonderful thing. I mean, it's a totally wonderful thing, because I'm so happy for folks who, like me, have this vocation. You want to become a therapist, and there is a way. It's not crazy anymore. You can become a therapist. So that's great. And I have had patients who are psychotherapists, who are RPs, and or are becoming RPs, or who are telling me for the first time, Dr. Hugo, what do you think? You think, what do you think of this? I feel like I want to become a therapist. I've been an accountant, or I've been an engineer, or what have you. I've been a librarian, and I want to be a therapist. And I'm like, tell me about it. Tell me about your vocation. That's very exciting. And some of them don't pursue the path. It comes as an idea. But, when you're switching careers, that's that's a big decision. And I know that too, because before I became a psychologist, I was an engineer. I was an engineering electronics, but I always wanted to be a psychologist. So I understand. I understand. If you're switching careers, I know exactly what you're going through. So it's wonderful that you have this available to you. And I support that vocation 100%. I supervise RPs as well. They're not just my patients, they're my colleagues as well. I teach them. I teach them a seminar once a month. I have a group of really interested people with powerful vocations who we get together and I teach them. I teach them the wisdom of psychotherapy. I teach them how I see the practice. I teach them the readings that are meaningful to me. It's not a university course, but I said, hey, this is how I'm gonna how I see the practice. These are the books. These are the papers that inform my practice. This is what I study. This is my PhD. This is how I read science. This is how I read the practice, and this is how I read the therapeutic relationship. I'm going to teach you about the therapeutic relationship. That's the arena where this happens. This is not about just getting the degree. You have a degree you put behind your wall. That's very cool. It gives you the registration number. That's very good. That's necessary. But there's a heck of a lot more than that. And it's called the psychotherapeutic wisdom. And I compare myself there. I tell folks, I tell my patients, the way I think of myself as a journeyman, as a tradesperson. That's how I see myself. Uh, you know, all of us, I think, are trade people, because everybody has their own book. It's not like we apply EFT exactly the same way. It's not even that we all go into like super depth and commit to EFT like forever and a day, or to psychoanalysis or anything like that. These days models are eclectic, and when you are a journeyman, you develop your own way. So I am a journeyman of psychotherapy, and if you're my apprentice, I'm going to teach you my ways, and I'm going to bring about all of this. I'm going to bring the inspirations from Rosie and from Great Gertrude, and I'm going to, remember how that shaped me. I'm going to talk to you like that. I'm going to talk to you like a colleague, a senior colleague, like Rosie and Gertrude were to me. And that's wonderful. I support that incredibly well and incredibly powerfully. I do. Here's something that I would like you to consider. It used to be a dream. Let me frame it this way. It used to be a dream. Not everybody has that dream, but many people, me included, we had this dream of having a private practice. Imagine you're your own boss. You only have above you, you have the college, you have, a supervisory body, but you don't have a manager. You don't have, schedule you have to live by, and so on. There are many responsibilities, but also many advantages to becoming, to having a private practice, and many people, we see it that way. Now, it used to be, I remember people saying this, oh, such and such is moving to private practice. Oh yeah, yeah. They worked at Sick Kids for 10 years. They worked at Sick Kids for 12, 15 years. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They did neuropsychology there. They did, work with children. Although they worked to CAMH, and they were, I mean, this is prior CAMH. But they worked at, Mount Sinai. They worked at Mount Sinai under, Dr. Chagoya for years. They learned, couples therapy, and they're opening their private practice. Oh, good for them. So what is happening is that I heard this recently. I read, someone posted, a colleague, uh, don't quote me on this, but I think he said something like, uh, places like the CRPO there, it's registering 2,000, 3,000, in the thousands, new members every year. That's a lot. I mean, remember, 5, 7, 12, 20 thousands. I mean, I hope that someone can correct me and say that's insane. But I mean, since only the thousands is in the hundreds, I think he or she can remember, was going by the digits in the registration number. So if that were the case, I'm thinking, are we going from one extreme to the other? I'm thinking, what are the consequences of that? I'm thinking, I mean, competition for sure. I mean, without a doubt, you have more competitive business aspect of it. Particularly, I mean, not so for folks who are established. I'm not particularly concerned about that business-wise, but I'm concerned about you guys. I'm concerned about you're competing against each other. I mean, I think I went on BetterHelp, and you could see where's love poems to the patient. Basically, some people are like people speaking from their vocation. I feel I work from this position, and I do this. I want you to truly believe me that I want to help you, and I'm a good person to help you. Without a doubt, you have that vocation. Remember, I support that. Question is, how are you going to make a living with that? It's very competitive. It puts a lot of pressure. And a lot of people jumping into private practice. I was doing a type of private practice, what I was doing at Warren Shepell. What Warren Shepell gave me was the TIMO of private practices. That's what I got from Warren Shepell. That's something I learned from my kids. I got the TIMO of private practices. But it was fantastic. So are you going to get the team of private practice? Is places like BetterHelp the team of private practices for you? I'm thinking. These are issues, questions that have no direct answer. It's just things to reflect on. My patients sometimes, often, when I make a reflection to them, they say, oh, okay, I get it, I see it. So what do we do now? What do we do now? And the answer is always the same. I say, psychotherapy is not a call to action. Psychotherapy is a call to reflection. We will see about the action, but it's not like, okay, well, this is what you do. You're observing this with me. This is a good time to apply a buzzword. Let's hold the space for that. What do we do with that? It's BetterHelp the team of private practices. And then the question is, what are you doing to shape your soul, your psychotherapeutic soul. What's your plan? Uh, beyond CEs, your college is going to say you need this many CEs, you need this, you're going to do that, and you do it with, you pick and choose and you try your best. I mean, that's how I got to see, uh, you know, Dr. Sue Johnson. May she rest in peace. Um, that's how I had that incredible opportunity. But beyond that, where is your Rosie? Where is your Gertrude? Do you have that? Do you have senior people who can help you? That's senior people who can uh, uh, trace people, journey people, journeyman, journey trace people who can help you, think about the profession. Do you have that? Being in private practice is also incredibly emotionally difficult because you're dealing all the time with the imposter syndrome. That's what you're dealing all the time with. People come to you and they talk to you, and you're like, okay, what do I say to this person? Do I tell them, look at yourself in the mirror every morning and repeat, I am perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. And things like that. Is that what you're going to tell your patients to do? Is that it? Are you going to say, oh, whatever the issue is, I've got this. I have the CBT tools. Check it. Got this. Maybe, oh, I have a CBT or I have a psychoanalysis, whatever. That's not going to be enough. Because if you're being turned out and jumping into the Timu of psychotherapists, you're doing private practice, what do you do with that anxiety? Because I felt it. Remember where I come from? I felt that anxiety. What are you going to do about it? Right? It can be overwhelming. What do you do about it? Where is Rosie? And then, what are you going to do about healing? Every single therapist that comes in touch with me, I will tell them the same thing. You cannot take someone to a place you've never been before. How do you know that psychotherapy works? Because you learned that it works, and because you've had some effects with people, that's why it works. Okay, of course, that's how you know how it works. But I strongly recommend that you experience psychotherapy from the other side, that you be a patient. When the patient becomes defensive, how do you know how that feels? Well, if you're in therapy and you become defensive, then you will know when you're, giving it to the patient, and the patient is defensive. I know how you feel, right? I can tell you, I know what it's like to have a vocation and be constrained. I know that. That's why I have this incredible agape love towards psychotherapists, because I was that, and I wish I had that you have now. Is wonderful. But what are you going to do about your own healing? And how do you look for therapists? Where Rosie and Gertrude are also clinicians. They see people. They see people who want to be therapists, right? You have, there's these colleagues that you see. I mean, who are you going to see as a psychotherapist? A colleague, a senior colleague. And if this transmission of the trade doesn't happen, imagine, you have I've worked with so many electricians, it's not even funny. And so I know quite well the process of apprenticeship. Imagine that somehow, there's thousands of electricians being formed. This is a churning out. It's very slow. Becoming an electrician is a serious thing to get that ticket. Not an easy thing at all. And imagine if all of a sudden there's not enough senior people to teach you the trade. Imagine that then so how do you learn to become an electrician? YouTube videos, Instagram Reels, ChatGPT. I'm talking to my other colleague who's also in the same boat I am. Kind of very difficult, very difficult. Something to think about. I had the opposite problem. I had like this is impossible. And that was incredibly difficult. It really, really, makes you question if that's really something you want to do. You're making very little money. I was making very little money. Very little money. I remember I was so eager to see patients that I saw my first patients for, I think it was $12, $20. And people who have become psychoanalysts, often to get a patient, they have accepted $5. Senior, very senior folks I've known in the field sold their first patient for $5. They could afford it. They had money from a different stream, career change and all that. But I need this supervision so badly, because you need to commit a patient to 300 hours, 300 clinical hours. We're talking about 3 years, 4 years. And you're supervising that case all along with a senior person in the trade. So now you have the opposite problem. You have many clinicians doing that. And there's more availability of clients. A lot of effort has been put by institutions into promoting mental health. A lot. Movies, series, the idea of vulnerability and growth and healing, and this is like a boom, 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 boom. I didn't have that in my time either. So there's availability. So questions to think about. There were questions to think about back then. There's questions to think about now. Right? Supervision is a place of reflection as well. Right? And that's reflection, is holding the space. Anyway, I would strongly suggest that you consider having therapy with someone who can guide you, someone you can go to with the anxieties of being early in the profession, the anxiety of dealing with therapy. I mean, what do you think you do in your therapy when you're a therapist? You talk about your patients all the time. Not only that, of course, but that's a place where you go and you tell your therapist, saw this person today and it really pissed me off. Can you believe that I really tried to help them and I said this? Can you believe that they sent me this nasty email, like telling me this and that? Can you believe that we had this incredible session that I felt so good about it? The person comes and the session after said, I can't believe you said this and that. You're an animal. How could you say this to me? But I'm walking away from here. Or what do you do when we have such a great session? I think this is really going well. And then you get ghosted by the patient. The patient disappears. Sometimes owing money. What are you going to do? Send them to collection? No, don't do that. Some colleagues have done that. Never do that. Never. that's a clinical issue. That person is not stealing your money. That person is not betting on their um, growth. That's what it is. Yeah. So um, consider that when the patient uh, doesn't pay you, is not um, anything else but I am not willing to bet on my growth. I don't believe in you. I don't believe in this process. I don't believe that I can change. It's something like that. Or I'm so hurt by life that these things happen. So please, don't ever send the patient to collections. Um, so that's what I wanted to say. I've been meaning to make this video, and the what's been behind it really is the thinking about Warren Shepell. He gave us a talk recently, and I didn't attend. I um, think I have a link. Maybe sometimes I'd like to watch it. So, and then I thought about my colleagues, and I thought about my early training and how this happened, and this current conversation about in the field about how many psychotherapists are there, and are they taking our business away? And yeah, there's this business issues. They're there. It is what it is. Um, but I want to talk about the clinical issues about it, around it. I want to talk to you about you. I want to talk to you about I see you. It's wonderful what you're doing as a psychotherapist. Wow, you have all my support. I want you to think about these big questions. I want you to really educate your vocation, shape it. I want you to realize that therapy is a spiritual matter. We don't just teach skills and help people how to think. These incredible tools like CBT, you need to get into that. You have these incredible tools like DBT, you definitely need to get into that. But there's a heck of a lot more than that. So I'll leave you with that. Good talking to you. See you next time.